Okay, now we're going to look at essentials in literature and how we use that on a daily basis. I've got my essentials in literature workbook for the kids, the resource book that has worksheets and independent practice and things like that in it. This is the novel that comes with essentials in literature, To Kill a Mockingbird. We won't use that until later in the school year. And then we've got our stories that we found online. These are the stories that are in the files section of the Facebook group, and they are free online. One of the moms just put them together into a file so that we could have them to print out, and that was a really nice thing for them to do. So I've got them all here in a notebook separated by section, and so that's what we're using. So let's look at how we use this on a daily basis. Again, the videos are going to be the foundation of this curriculum. The first story was called Bernice Bobs Her Hair. So this is the fiction section. And if you'll notice up here in the corner of each page, it says day 1, day 2. There's a little icon that has either a book or it looks like a play symbol. This is going to tell you if there's just a book symbol there, you're just going to be reading the information that's there that day. If there's a play button, that means that you're going to be watching a video that day. So day 1, we're going to read a little bit about the story, what the theme of the story is. We're going to meet the author. We're going to find out whether it's American literature or from some other country. So just kind of a short lesson the first day. Day 2, we have the little play icon. So we watch the video and Mr. Stevens goes through and explains what we're learning about. He talks about the story and those sort of things. Here we're analyzing literature. We're talking about a protagonist and antagonist, and then we're going to make some connections. So at that point, you're going to read the story. And we looked completely over this page before we read, and there's a good reason that you need to do that. Down here on the bottom is the vocabulary, and there are a lot of words there that were in this story from the 1920s that either we didn't know or they were used in a different way in the 1920s than they're used now. So it was really good to go and look up those words and find out what they mean in the context of the story that we're reading. Once we read the story, here it says reading focus activity provided in the resource book on page 1. So we went over to the resource book, we found page 1, and there was a worksheet for them to compare themselves to the characters in the book. Day 3, there's a video. And then after you read, you're going to check the comprehension. There's some things there to help you think critically, learn about the main idea, different things like that. A lot of good discussion content there for you to have with your kids. And then you're going to move on over here. We're still on day 3 because there's not a new label up here in the top. So we're still on day 3. We're talking more about protagonist and antagonist. And it's telling us to go to the resource book and find another page that we're going to complete. Then there's this dive deeper section. And this just got some things to think about a little bit deeper, to analyze, apply it to your life, things like that. Good discussion topics again. Next, we're on day 4. Again, there's a play button, so we're going to watch the video. And we're going to go in and we're going to analyze the literature. This one's talking about motive. And so it tells us some different things to think about. With my kids, we do this orally. If your kid is better at writing their thoughts out than speaking about them, you might let them do that. We discussed all of this. And also with the connection reflections. Down at the bottom, you'll find a writing connection. Each one of the stories has one of these, and it just gives your student an opportunity to connect to the literature with writing. Here we're on day 5. There's the book icon, so this is just what we're going to read today. There's no video this day. Here it told us to look up an article online about the 1920s and the social change that was going on during that time. And it was really enlightening. We read it together, my kids and I read it together, and then we talked about it, and it was really a good discussion. It opened up a lot of doors for us to talk about what's happening in the world now as opposed to what was happening in the world in 1920, or I should say in similarity to the things that were happening in 1920. There's actually a lot of things that are kind of reminiscent of what was going on then that are still going on now, or that are going on again now. And then some extended activities. There's an essay question there. This one had a dancing option. You could go online and look up how to do the Charleston and have Charleston dance off with your kids. I tried to talk them into doing that. They didn't really want to. I think they didn't want to see me dance, but anyway. If you come to the bottom here, it says stop. Complete the independent practice on page 4 of the resource book. So you go to page 4 of the resource book, and there's an independent practice that has several multiple choice questions and then some essay questions, or should I say longer response questions, not necessarily essay questions. One of the things that my son brought up is that he wished for this story that we had gone through the independent practice while we were reading the story or shortly after to help him remember. When we did this, we were using the optional schedule where there were some writing days in between, and so it had been quite a while since we had read the story when we did the independent practice, and there's just some details in that both my kids were having a hard time remembering and even having a hard time finding as we went and looked back through the story. And so I think this next time for the next section, we're gonna do the independent practice as we go through the story, and then we're gonna go back at the end and have them do that independent practice again. We'll see how it goes. I'll let you know in the next video. But that's an overview of how the literature sections go, and I really think this is going to be a great program for our family, and I hope it is for yours too.